All right. We had a little change of plans because Dr. Tgiaf couldn't make it to do his in-service today. So we're going to pick it up. Today we're going to talk about abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Excuse me, can I have your attention, please? The sooner I start talking, the sooner we get this over with, okay? All right, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. There are federal and state laws mandating what we have to do if we see any or do any of this stuff. And lately we've had a few examples of this stuff here in this building. Okay? Federal requirements require that all facilities report alleged violations and substantiated violations to the state and the feds. So what does that mean? That means that Barbara is going to fill out the Elder Justice Act. She's going to call DCF. She's going to call the police. I'm going to file the federal 1-day, the federal 5-day, the state 15-day, and anything else that I have to do along with it. So there's a lot of reporting that has to go along with what happens. We're going to be out talking to you guys, collecting statements and all of those things to substantiate or non-substantiate a claim, okay? We also have to make sure that we have shown evidence of what we did to prevent it from happening again, okay? Goes along with what happens if you steal patients' money and we find out who you are. You can go to jail, but you won't have a job here either. And then I have to report you to the Board of Nursing or whoever handles your licensure. Okay? So, must be Gloria. I was uncomfortable there. So, it has a lot more repercussions than just, oh, I might lose my job. You could lose your license and a whole lot of other things. You could spend some time in jail, okay? And it's probably going to cost you more money than it was worth to do to start with, okay? We have to provide documentation on what we did about all of those things. So we're writing statements, we have an investigation protocol that we have to go through. Depending on what it is, depends on when it has to be reported. And the Elder Justice Act is not just us reporting. You guys have an obligation to report anything that you see or you think might be going on. What happens if you don't and they find out that you knew about it and you didn't report it?
You're just as responsible.
You're just as guilty, but you can be fined up to $300,000. And trust me, Uncle Sam will find a way to take it from you. Okay? So we try to report all of those things for you so that you don't have to do that and keep you from being caught up in all those fines and things like that, because we don't want you fined. We don't want to be fined. So we do the best we can to prevent that. Okay? What is the definition of abuse? Abuse is the willful infliction of injury, unreasonable confinement, intimidation, or punishment with resulting physical harm, pain, or mental anguish. Okay? Okay, so what is the definition of neglect? That's right. Neglect is the failure to provide goods and services necessary to avoid physical harm, mental anguish, or mental illness. That means that if a patient's bed is wet, you need to be changing the bed. Okay? Because then you're putting the patient in the position for skin breakdown because you didn't change the sheets on the bed. Okay? There are several different categories that fall under abuse and neglect, and they are physical abuse, sexual assault, misuse of restraints, okay, emotional or psychological abuse, verbal abuse, involuntary seclusion, medical neglect, abandonment, or financial or material exploitation. So there are 7 different components to our investigation, and the first one is to prevent. The facility has the capability to prevent the occurrence of abuse and neglect and reviews all incidents for possible lessons learned.
Oh, it's okay, free. That's all right, let's do it.
Okay, so what do we do to take a proactive approach to prevention? We educate. Okay. We not only educate the staff, but we also are supposed to be educating the family and the patient. They don't always listen to us, but we have to educate them. We monitor all of the activities in the facility and what each staff member is doing to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. Okay. What do we do if we identify a problem? We retrain. We reprimand if we need to. Okay? There are different things. The next step in this process is screening. So we have to screen all people we hire, and by that they call it a live scan. It's when you go get your fingerprints done. Okay. We're also looking at that to see if you have ever been arrested for anything like abuse, neglect, or charged with it. You don't even have to be found guilty of it, just even charged with it. And I know some people say, well, that's not fair, maybe it was an unfounded situation, but we have to look at all of it because the potential is there. Okay? We usually screen residents too, to make sure that we can provide proper care for them, but also for things like, are they a pedophile? We have an elementary school right down the road. We will not knowingly take a pedophile in this building. It has happened, but we found out about it after the fact. Okay? And that's to keep, the screens that we do are to keep the staff and the residents safe. Okay? What are some of the risk factors for abuse and neglect? Typical abusers are direct caregivers, for one. They're also typically the lowest paid employee and have to work in the most understaffed areas. Now, a lot of times I get out there on the floor and I hear, well, we're understaffed today. You're never understaffed. Never. We have federal guidelines that we have to go by. So if one of us has to get out there on the floor and work as a CNA, and how many times have you seen us out there doing it? A lot. That's to keep you from being understaffed. Okay? Another risk factor is perpetrators are often new hires, they're often male, and they often work 3 to 11. Well, I don't know. There's more guys getting into the field, you know. Okay. As a facility, we are doing ongoing education, which is what this is. We do the monitoring, we do the screening, we do the scheduling, all of those wonderful things, okay? We also train you. So what kind of training do you think we give you? We train you on abuse, neglect. We also train you on how to report things, right? Okay. We also train you on protection, things like the active shooter, you know, because we want to protect you, but we also want to protect the resident. Okay? There are several different things that we have had to add. Active shooter is one of them. They changed the name recently so that it includes anybody that comes in the building who has the potential to be violent. Okay? We teach you basic communication skills because we want you to tell us. We don't want you to feel afraid to come up and tell us that either you know of a problem or you think there's a potential for a problem. Okay? We also do conflict resolution and anger management. Okay? We teach you how to deal with the cognitively impaired and those with difficult behaviors. And we're going to get them, so we got to learn how to take care of them, right? We teach about disease and age-specific changes and conditions, physical, psychosocial, and how to manage some of those things. And you have to have the Alzheimer's training, right? What do we expect from you? We expect that you honor the residents' rights, you treat all of the residents with respect, dignity, and privacy, that you learn how to remain calm and be professional at all times. Okay? So that means if you've got problems and stuff, hang them up at the door before you walk in. Pick them up when you leave. Easier said than done, yes, but we really have to work at that. Okay? And we have to understand what abuse and neglect is and the different modalities that show up with our patients. Okay? Because you get the verbal abuse, you get the little lady that comes in here and she'll be real chatty when her husband's not around, and when he comes in he clams up. Seen those? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that leads us into protecting our residents and our staff. We want to protect their physical and mental well-being also. We want to protect the rights of women. That's why we do have a chaplain, and we have had, we've had some, what is it, Megan, I was trying to think of. Support groups for different things, like the safe haven thing, where if you had a place to go and talk if you think you've been abused or you're dealing with abuse. Okay, and that's still ongoing. You just have to come talk to the powers that be and find out where they're going on at. Okay? Resident protection is we have to separate the patient from the abuser. We do frequent monitoring. Sometimes we do room changes or a staffing change. We maintain residents' rights to assume reasonable risk. We care plan to recognize those rights. We protect from service interruptions and restrictions and all forms of retaliation. We have an interdisciplinary team approach, and we provide the aspects of care most important to give the patient or the staff member a sense of well-being. Okay? And we usually have counseling to follow up with that. Okay? How do we protect those who report? We enforce an environment that protects the reporter from retaliation during and after the investigation. And we enforce an environment that assures the reporter that he or she will not be looked upon negatively or receive any form of treatment that might be considered punishment. Okay? We have to protect the alleged perpetrator also. And that may be that you get suspended for a couple of days, okay? Or you get terminated. You get due process. You are alleged until you're proven innocent, by the way. And individual protection. If you are suspended because of something that is going on that's an alleged thing, that's also to protect you. Because if it's unfounded, when we bring you back to work, we give you the pay that you missed because you had been suspended, okay? Okay. Any employee who suspects or witnesses abuse or neglect towards a resident must report it to the facility administrator or designee. Who's the abuse coordinator in this building? Hmm? Barbara. Okay. Not me. I'm the risk manager. Okay? So, but you can report it to either one of us or to Debbie. Okay? We try to ensure that any suspected or alleged incidents of abuse and neglect are thoroughly and objectively reported and investigated. Okay? And I told you who all we have to report it to, so. And then we have to do like an internal investigation. I'm not going through all of that stuff because I already told you that. Okay? So, I'm going to give you a situation and you tell me what you think you might do. Okay. The first one is, you find a resident is consistently not receiving showers or adequate care because she has difficult behavior that offends many residents. And this has been going on for about a month. Would you consider this abuse, neglect, or exploitation?
Neglect.
It's neglect. What would you do about it? You can try having someone else give the shower, or you can go in as a team, or you can get with social services and have them talk to the patient and the family to see if there are ways that we can resolve that problem. Okay? Okay, so you enter the dining room area and you find a fellow employee making suggestive sexual remarks and physical tugging on a resident's more private areas. And the resident has extensive dementia. What would you consider this?
Abuse.
Abuse. Sexual abuse. What would you do about it?
Report it.
Who would you report it to? Everybody. Me, Barbara, Debbie, everybody. Okay. You overhear a nurse tell a resident in her room, if you don't take your medication right now, I'll have to call your daughter and let her know that you are not cooperating with your care. And this is not a good thing. What is this?
Nothing.
It's abuse. It's verbal abuse. Okay? What would you do about it?
Report it.
Report it. If it's the first time you ever heard it from that particular person, you can say, hey, you know, you need to really watch what you're saying. It's coming off as abuse. But if you hear it again, it better get reported. Okay? Okay. You're told by a resident that she was touched in the wrong places by a nursing assistant while receiving her shower and felt ashamed and very uncomfortable. What is this? It's abuse. Okay, what would you do about that one?
Report.
Report it. Okay. You found various bruises and sores in a resident's arm and back. She says, the bad woman hurt me. I need your help. What is this? Abuse. What would you do about it?
Report.
Report it. Okay. And you might start with reporting it to the nurse or the unit manager so that they can start a little bit of an investigation because it may have been something that wasn't even really abuse. Okay? You are told by a coworker, Mrs. Dixon in room 404 thinks that I'm such a good CNA that she gave me her diamond ring. Isn't it beautiful? She thinks of me as a daughter she never had. What is this? Exploitation. Okay? What would you do about it?
Report.
Definitely. You want to report that like ASAP. So everybody knows what to do and who to report things to, right?
Right.
Good. Y'all have a great day.
Yeah.
Good job there.